Welcome to Morning Brief. I'm Julie Hyman, actually snowed in New Jersey, along with millions of people across the country. We will be tracking the brutal winter storm that has affected 17 states in the United States and left millions of people without power. But let's get to the three things that you need to know today besides the storm. We're watching markets as it's a big week here. A lot going on this week. Ahead of that, futures aren't much changed. But we will, of course, be watching what's going on with the Federal Reserve. It's set to make a decision this week on rates and isn't in fact expected to change rates. But the battle over the leadership and independence of the Fed does loom large over that decision. And most economists think that politics might play a bigger role than policy in the press conference in particular. And speaking of the leadership of the Fed, President Trump is still expected at some point to perhaps even this week, to announce his pick for next leader of the Fed. BlackRock's Rick Rieder has been rising in the odds on poly markets, so we'll be tracking that. And of course, by the way, it's not just the Fed. We got a lot going on with earnings as well. Four names in the Magnificent Seven are going to be reporting: Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, and Apple. And then outside of what's going on in stocks, we have big moves in the metals market. Gold breaking above $5,000 an ounce for the first time. Of course, that's a new record high. Silver is making a new record as well. And that's as we see the dollar going down and investors looking for what they perceive as safer assets. So we'll be tracking that as well. And this also having to do with the odds of a government shutdown spiking, now sitting at around 81%. And this was after we saw a federal agent fatally shooting Alex Preddy in Minnesota. And now Democrats are saying they will not approve the funding as it exists for the Department of Homeland Security, under which ICE sits. We'll be watching that situation to see how it all turns out. So those are your three things. Let's first talk about this big winter storm that has been affecting a large swath of the U.S. Brooke DiPalma made it into the office. She lives a little bit closer in. So, Brooke, as I said, 17 states have been affected by this. Millions of people in the U.S. are snowed in or iced in. Many cities suffering more from the ice than from the snow. What's been standing out to you in some of the stats you've been seeing? And by the way, how was your commute in? How did you get in this morning?
Julie, let's start with that, because thanks to my fiance, Dylan, he actually drove me in this morning to the path in Hoboken. This was my commute. We got about 16 inches of snow. Luckily, many were out plowing yesterday throughout the day into this morning. But as you can see right here on the screen, definitely not an easy drive in. Most of the roads still covered in snow. Also icy this morning, especially really early. So definitely be careful driving. But New York, New Jersey, the metro area, not alone in this. One of the hardest hit states is actually Tennessee. There they have the most power outages, and that's part of a larger power outage that we're seeing across the U.S. About 823,000 Americans right now without power, about 10,000 flights. And since we've been on air, that has actually updated from about 9,000 delays this morning to about 10,000. We now know today that there's about 4,200 flights canceled. Yesterday alone, there was 13,000 flights canceled. So definitely a large impact there when it comes to both power outages, Americans getting back into the swing of things this Monday morning. And also, if you're looking to travel, it looks like it might be hard to do that anytime soon.
Yeah, so we'll be watching the airlines, of course, to see how they're affected. We're also going to be watching the utilities very closely. PJM, which is the biggest grid operator in the U.S., has said it is bracing for 7 days of extreme demand, because even when we start digging out from the snow, the extreme cold is expected to persist. Lucky us. So we'll be experiencing that. So you've got power, you've got airlines. I don't know about you. I know that you track Home Depot closely. I went to Home Depot on Friday, and they were out of road salt entirely. They were selling pool salt, which they told me, they assured me would be effective. And so I bought myself a bag of pool salt to try to keep things from getting too slippery. But, these are the things that we watch sort of in the aftermaths of storms like this. Yeah. Will Home Depot actually see a little bit of an uptick because of the demand for supplies ahead of the storm?
And Julie, we have heard that in past quarters when there's weather-related events, they typically do well. Of course, Home Depot, also Lowe's, tend to perform better in this sort of environment. So we'll definitely be looking forward to that. Keep in mind, Q4 won't reflect this, likely be reflected in Q1. But on top of that, too, not only did Home Depot and Lowe's get a surge of customers, but on the flip side, one company that actually saw a backtrack of customers was DoorDash, at least here in New York City. If you looked online, if you looked on TikTok, on Instagram, you saw so many delivery workers out there yesterday in the morning during this storm weather. And then actually come around 6 p.m. Eastern, DoorDash, at least in New York City alone, decided to stop their service for an interim period. It will resume at 10 a.m. Eastern this morning, once again here in New York City. But they just felt that it was too dangerous for employees or these drivers, these delivery workers, to be outside in these sort of conditions, these ice storms that we saw yesterday afternoon. And so really it was a flip side. We saw a surge of customers going to Home Depot and Lowe's, and in this sort of environment where everyone wanted to stay home, DoorDash decided to take the precaution to say, not so fast here. We're going to sort of pause service for now.
Yeah, that seems like it was the safer thing to do. Also, pop quiz for you, Brooke. I went to 2 grocery stores on Friday. Couldn't get to the store till Friday. Guess what item both grocery stores completely cleaned out of?
Eggs.
Chicken.
Chicken.
I don't think they had eggs either, but chicken. There was no raw chicken to be had.
There was no chicken, no beef, no milk, nothing at a Trader Joe's near me. Completely wiped out shelf. Even vegetables. I mean, eventually things are going to get back. It's just Monday morning. We're already back at work here. I think that, obviously the restock here, give it a few days to fill back in with inventory.
It'll happen. But I don't know that I have ever experienced anything like that before. Brooke, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, as I mentioned, we have a lot going on this week in the form of earnings, particularly large tech. And so let's get to our tech editor, Dan Halley. Of course, he is looking ahead to many of these numbers. Hey, Dan, let's talk about Microsoft, first of all, because, we're going to be looking to AI effects. We're going to be looking to Azure. What should people be watching for in those numbers?
Yeah, I think those are really going to be obviously the main drivers for Microsoft. It's been that way for a few quarters now. The AI impact on Azure, Microsoft used to list that actually, how much percentage of revenue growth they saw as a result of AI, but they don't do that any longer. I think it's just a result of the fact that the AI continues to drive a good chunk of growth. So they figured we don't really have to include that anymore. But it was a helpful stat, just helping people figure out how much AI is really impacting the overall revenue stream for the company. But we're going to be looking at how much Azure growth, how much Azure has grown in the quarter year over year, just as a result of the increased demand from users. We also want to know from Microsoft what the capacity constraints are like. They've said that despite building out these data centers, they're still capacity constrained, which is putting limits on how much they can see growth out of Azure and the cloud business overall. And so if we can get a sense on what that kind of looks like, how the build out is continuing when they may no longer be capacity constrained, I think that will be really important to a lot of investors. And then obviously the Microsoft Windows side of things, what that looks like, obviously PC sales, not as important to Microsoft as they once were in years past, but still a good chunk of the business. And there was supposed to be a huge jump in PC sales. We saw Gartner say that sales had increased for the year 2025. But what does that mean then for Microsoft when it comes to Windows in the prior quarter?
And the same afternoon that we get Microsoft, which is Wednesday after the bell, we're also going to be getting Meta numbers, Dan. Something I'm curious about that we didn't mention just now with Microsoft, but, we have the big spending plans from all of these companies. Are we expecting to get any kind of update on those plans, or are they pretty much going to hold steady?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of where we're supposed to get Meta's layout for spending for the year. They had previously said that they expect to see spending increase from 2025, tens of billions of dollars for Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta. Meta hopefully will get a number from them for the overall year. We know that they continue to do this build out. We know that they are, continuing to buy these GPUs, but it's not just the GPUs. It's obviously the networking, the servers, the buildings themselves. And so we're hoping to learn more about what that looks like for them, and then how investors react to that, right? Because everybody wants to say that they have AI. Everybody wants to have the revenue or revenue potential for AI. But you got to spend a lot of money to make money. And Meta certainly has been the one spending a lot of money. I think it'll also be interesting to see what Reality Labs is like at this point. They had those layoffs. They're cutting back on that metaverse division and then moving some of those savings over to the wearables division. Are they seeing increased revenue from there? What do the losses look like? I mean, obviously, we're not expecting Reality Labs to be cash flow positive, but have there been any changes over the last few months with regards to what that spending looks like for them in particular?
All right. Thanks, Dan. Looking forward to all of your coverage of those numbers. Let's also talk about another company that is reporting the very same afternoon after the close, and that is Tesla. We heard from Elon Musk recently when he spoke in Davos, was interviewed by Larry Fink, talked about robots, talked about some of the other aspects of the business. Pras Subramanian, who covers Tesla, joining us now. So what should we be? I mean, there's always the disconnect between like the far away, long away promises from Tesla and what's happening in the here and now. So in that latter category, what will we be paying attention to?
So, in the here and now, real quick, the estimates that analysts are looking for, or analysts are compiling for Q4 earnings, are 25.1 billion, slightly lower than last year's revenue figure, on adjusted EPS of 45 cents a share, right? So that's the here and now, right? But as we know, we saw deliveries coming for Q4. They were down 15% to 418,000 units, with full year sales down 8%, right? So what really matters, right? And I think that's what you're hinting at, Julie, is the further out stuff. So robotaxis, right? I think there's going to be a lot of interest in what Musk and company have to say about the safety monitors being pulled on a limited basis in Austin. How many have been pulled? When will all of them be removed potentially? Is there a target? There's some questions there to be asked. And when do we see the tests in Arizona and Nevada coming up? It's a very slow rollout here for Tesla with regards to robotaxis. Waymo, meanwhile, entering new regions and territories seemingly every day. The other big thing is the Cybercab, right? That rollout is must be very slow at first. April was, I guess, the timeline or the initial start of production for that. We'll see if that's still on the horizon for their purpose-built robotaxi. And finally, Optimus, that's the really way out bet there, right? So Morgan Stanley believes that we'll see the Gen 3 robot, that version, later this year. Musk's vision of robots in the factory by the end of the year, probably kind of far-fetched. So I think Wall Street and investors are looking for more color on what's actually doable.
Yeah, should be quite interesting. And the stock has kind of stalled out this year. So that's also the backdrop for this report. Thanks, Pras. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other big item that we've been looking ahead to this week is, of course, the Fed meeting. As I mentioned, doesn't look like there's going to be any change in rates. Our Jennifer Schonberger, our Federal Reserve correspondent, is, of course, going to be tracking that. And as usual, we'll be looking to the press conference to get some more color on what's going on behind the scenes at the Fed.
That's right, Julie. Good morning. The Fed widely expected to hold rates steady. We're not getting any new interest rate projections, any new economic projections. So all eyes on Fed Chair Jay Powell's press conference, where I expect him to reiterate that rates are now in the plausible range of neutral. And so what people are looking for is, how long will the Fed remain on hold at this point before they cut rates further? And so that's why there's going to be so much interest around where is neutral, neutral being the level on interest rates that neither spurs nor slows economic growth. And many policymakers leading up to the policy meeting this Wednesday have said that policy is in a good place, essentially signaling, hey, we are good to hold here, take stock of the economy, and we have flexibility to move if the risks shift. Now, the other thing I'm going to be looking for is dissents, because over the past couple of meetings, we have seen dissents on both sides. This time, with the Fed expected to hold rates for the first time after cutting rates at 3 consecutive meetings, I expect Fed Governor Stephen Myron to dissent because he wants to continue cutting rates. I will be looking for Michelle Bowman to see if she dissents this time because she made a very clear-cut case on continued concerns about the job market to cut rates. This was in a speech 2 weeks ago. And then I'll also be looking at Fed Governor Chris Waller, who has also showed continued concern about the job market as well.
Jen, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Coming up next, we'll be digging more into that big move up in precious metals. We'll be right back. Gold prices have been surging, breaking above $5,000 for the very first time. Silver, by the way, is also joining it. And this as we continue to have jitters in the market over everything from what's going on with Japanese bonds to geopolitical concerns aside from that. Let's talk about it more as well as what's going on more broadly in the market. Michele Schneide joining me now, MarketGauge.com, chief strategist outside of the snow zone, luckily for you, Mish, down there in New Mexico. But I do want to talk to you about what's going on with the precious metals, because, I mean, the run has already been incredible. And now we have this breaking of $5,000. How significant do you think that level was, and what happens now?
Well, first of all, I think the most biggest takeaway from the gold market is that it has been a very reliable mirror in that it shows all the potential cracks. And at 5,000, what it's really saying is, are those cracks going to become more like fissures, right? And so you've mentioned some of the cracks already, obviously geopolitical situation being one, but on the other hand, we also have the silver market, right? And so essentially that gold to silver ratio is showing yet another potential crack that many people aren't talking about, which is, are we going from the prediction of disinflation into more of a super cycle of hyperinflation? Because all of a sudden, even with all the economic growth that's projected, the demand on commodities is also going to continue to grow. So it's I don't see gold or silver going down. That doesn't mean we can't have a correction. Would I be first buying at 5,000? Probably very expensive to do so. But with predictions of 6,000, 8,000 and beyond, we don't really know. What we do know, this should be a little bit alarming to people about what's going on.
Well, and the flip side of that, and maybe the flip side of the alarm over that, is also the dollar, right? Which is going down. So are we, as we continue to see metals move up, does that definitely mean that we're going to continue to see the dollar move down?
Well, we've certainly seen the metals go up while the dollar was actually trying to consolidate and even have a little bit of a pop. So this recent downward move in the dollar is certainly another concern. We aren't at points yet where we need to start to panic about it, but now DXY just broke down under 97. And there's a lot of different reasons for why the dollar is selling off. I think the biggest concern we have to have, not only our own purchasing power and this whole inflationary potential, but also what does it mean for our relationships geopolitically with foreign countries who may not necessarily want to support our dollar. And so I think the best way to look at all of this backdrop is we got to look at the glass half full and half empty. And the half full part, Julie, is that everything that's going on with the administration, with the deglobalization and the onshoring and the muscling that we have to get more materials into this country, plus demand that people pay us, or either that or we're going to produce in this country, could be good. But we also know that there's a lot of things that could go wrong. And that's why we're seeing the dollar fall and the metals really continue to have a lot of support. So the question is, what happens to the overall market? That's right now, I think, a little bit under question because the market is strong.
Right. And, the sort of, as all of this stuff has been unfolding really over the past year, whether it's tariff threats or the Greenland situation, most investors who are bulls say to me, earnings are fine, right? And that's really the thing that's going to matter in this market. Is that how you see it also? I mean, especially since we're going into a week that is going to be blockbuster earnings, between large cap tech and just a very busy week for earnings.
Well, I think the earnings, to me, have always been sort of backwards looking in a sense. because it's reporting what it did in the quarter before. So the question is what happens in the following quarter? And there's going to be things that are going to affect certain earnings and things that don't affect other companies. Obviously, interest rates, that's going to be a big topic this week with the Fed, is going to be part of it. Economic statistics, consumer confidence, which comes out tomorrow. So the earnings are not necessarily, to me, what's the most important thing. It's going to be the reaction. And I think we can just start with Netflix, right? The earnings were fine, but the reaction was negative. So I think we're going to see that in some of the companies because they're going to be looking at CapEx and how much more money can be spent without the consumer participating in getting those companies to grow. And then I think there'll be other companies that might do well. I think of the earnings coming out this week, I'm mostly interested in Meta and Microsoft, probably somewhat technical, but also because those have not necessarily been participating in the big run that we saw as we were coming into this year, like we saw in some of the other stocks, like Google, for example. So it'll be interesting to see, but the whole tech area is not really been my major focus right now. Anyway, I mean, we own Micron because the memory's gotten hot, but my God, that thing's gone parabolic. I think we're seeing a big shift, rotation in this market right now.
And it's interesting that you talk about that, Mish, because we've seen like little kind of attempts at that rotation over the past year. This one feels more real or sustainable, right? But how will we know? Is it just a matter of waiting to see if it keeps going? Or are there other sort of technical signs that you can read underlying the market that tell you that this one is a little more here to stay?
Well, first of all, we have seen already small caps outperform this year, the NASDAQ. That's a new thing. We haven't seen that before. So we have to really not only see the small caps continue to do well, but we have to see some of those other inside sectors participate in order to keep the small caps going. From an economic standpoint, we have seen durable goods just came out very positive. So we are seeing growth in the US economy. That's what these are all about, right? This rotation is showing an optimism for the economy to continue to grow. Whether that optimism remains, of course, we don't know. But at this point, the also areas we have to look at in terms of where we're rotating is something like biotech, which has been under pressure for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, all these biotech companies are starting to perk up, not all, but many. And even from our own standpoint, where we do a lot of quantitative models off of trend strength indicators, we are rotating out of some retail names and smaller tech names into more biotech names. So this is all very interesting to me. We want to see small caps, IWM stay in the game. We want to see it get back over 267 and not fail the January lows. And if that happens, then we can continue to see that rotation. But again, with all the caveats that the mirror of our dear gold is showing constantly in your mind, you have to be really vigilant this year in terms of your own investing.
Well, and I'm curious, if we're talking about rotation, what does that imply for your positioning in big cap tech, right? If the rotation has been sort of out of those into some of these other groups, does that mean you're lightening the big tech you do have? Does it mean you're just kind of staying away from it right now? How are you thinking about that?
Well, we've lightened already. I mean, we came into this year with a lot of different positions. Right now, in terms of the big tech, the only ones that we're holding really is Google, Alphabet, and also Micron. I personally, from a discretionary standpoint, like I said, I'm looking more at the quantum space with Microsoft. And also, I think Meta sort of always gets underappreciated. It has a nice look to it right now. We'll see what the earnings bring. But NVIDIA, we're flat. I mean, the NVIDIA has really kind of done its job. And we saw there was big news today about CoreWeave, and that's probably why it's down a little bit. But Tesla, another one. I mean, these may all have a great future longer term. But if you're just getting in now, this to me would not be the place that's most exciting.
Interesting. All right. Take a look at those biotechs maybe instead. Mish, good to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a warm day, Julie.
Thank you. I will try. That does our morning brief. Coming up next is Opening Bid. Keep it right here on Yahoo Finance for the opening bell.